Hey everyone. So we started talking about something I think is becoming incredibly important, and that is the consequences of the Iran war that are no longer being confined to just Iran or even to just the Middle East. And we're seeing questions about American military readiness in Asia, and we're seeing pressure in global energy markets. And at the same time, Trump is escalating a completely separate economic confrontation with Canada. But I want to bring this back home because while all of this is happening internationally, there are also questions being raised about the treatment of American service members, um, not only the service members, but the financial condition of American households and the unusual moves happening inside of our own Treasury Department. So let's start with our troops. We have Senator Tammy Duckworth and 10 other Democratic members of the Senate Armed Service Committee that are reportedly demanding a public hearing into the treatment of American troops that are deployed in this support of the Iran war. And this connects directly to something we've already been talking about, and that's the USS Abraham Lincoln. So we've previously gone through reporting about conditions aboard that ship and concerns surrounding supplies and the strain that's being placed on these service members. And according to a lot of the things that I'm staying plugged into, those reports, along with reporting from outlets, including Military Times, they're now contributing to demands from lawmakers for public hearings. And regardless of your politics, Congress asking questions about conditions for deployed American service members should not be controversial whatsoever. If we're asking people to go into harm's way on behalf of the country, Congress has an obligation to understand whether they are receiving the resources and the supplies and the support that they need, especially during a conflict whose demands appear to be expanding. And this is where the foreign policy story begins colliding with the domestic economic story. Because while the administration continues talking about winning abroad and America's economic strengths, the financial picture for many American households looks totally different. So we have economist Heather Long, who recently pointed to an important divide in consumer spending. So, according to the figures cited in the Midas Touch update, much of the spending supporting the economy right now is coming from the top 20% of earners. Meanwhile, there's so many households that are essentially treading water, and you can see signs of that pressure in several different places. Number one, there's credit card debt. It's extremely high right now. Most people are turning to personal loans, turning to buy now, pay later services, and all of this is becoming increasingly common. And there's also signs of consumers pulling back even on grocery spending. So, those aren't necessarily indicators that the entire economy is collapsing, but we need to be careful about making that leap. But they can tell us something important about who is experiencing this economy as strong and who is not, because averages can hide enormous differences. If wealthy households continue spending aggressively while middle and lower income households increasingly rely on credit, the aggregate economy numbers can look considerably healthier than the experience of the typical family and what it is they're feeling. And that is politically dangerous because people don't experience GDP. They experience their grocery bill. They experience their rent, their mortgage, their credit card payments, their insurance, their car payment. And then there's the fact of Scott Bessant and the treasury market. So The next story I want to go into is complicated, but I think it's worth slowing down and sort of explaining because it could become a really important issue. So, we have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who's been trying to deal with elevated longer term Treasury yields. In very simple terms, when Treasury yields remain high, borrowing becomes more expensive. This can affect mortgages, it can affect businesses borrowing, ultimately the cost of servicing America's enormous national debt. So, according to the update, Treasury recently announced that it would double the size of certain long-term bond buybacks from 2 billion to at least 4 billion per operation. Now, there is reportedly discussions about potentially using some of the Treasury general account to provide additional capacity for government bond purchases. So, what is the Treasury general account? So think of it basically as the federal government's checking account at the Federal Reserve. Money comes in, money goes out, and the balance can be enormous. Right now, we're talking about a pool approaching $1 trillion. The idea reportedly being considered would give Treasury additional firepower to purchase longer dated government debt in an effort to influence the market and potentially bring yields down. Why would they want to do that? I asked. So, because high long-term interest rates are painful, and here's where economists are raising concern. So, when policymakers start taking increasingly aggressive steps to manipulate short term market conditions, you have to ask whether they're addressing the underlying problem or are they simply suppressing the symptom, and whether today's solution creates tomorrow's problem. And that's where I want to focus. That is the part of the story that I'm watching because markets also react to confidence. If investors begin believing that the government is intervening because it's worried about demand for American debt or worried about the borrowing costs or anything else, the intervention itself can send a message. So this simply isn't Treasury buys bonds, rates go down, problem solved. There can be a second and a third order consequence that comes up. These are the things I really want to keep paying attention to. They are driving our political landscape. They are driving the things that are felt in American households. I will continue breaking down these stories and more. I will catch you in the next one. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you soon.